Morning, everybody. So today we'll be taking a look at the end of chapter 2, which basically takes our 10 sentence patterns and shows us some variations or some exceptions to some of the 10 patterns that we're looking at. Nothing overly challenging, just some different forms of the way the sentences might appear. So the first thing we're going to look at today is we're going to take a look at a compound sentence. And then we'll continue on and we'll look at an example of an imperative sentence where the subject is missing. And we'll also look at an inverted sentence as well. And then we'll finish up by also looking at some exceptions, what the author would call some puzzler questions at the end of the chapter, rather. Anyway, so we'll take a look at that both today and also we'll finish it off tomorrow as we're getting ready for our first test on Friday. So I'm going to be using my third period sentences today. So obviously your name will be different from this one if you're not in the third period, but you'll get the gist. So here we go. Let's take a look at, what if we had these two separate sentences? What if I had sentence 1, which read, after a laborious, meaning labor-intensive or difficult, internet poll, the junior class named Mitchell Livingood as human of the day. And then what if I had he sashayed through the hallways with a glittery crown and blue sash? Because why not? So in this case, I want to start off by simply diagramming these two individual sentences. So I'm going to kind of go side by side with them. And so I already have orange, so we'll go with orange. I open up with a prep phrase, after a laborious internet poll. So I'm looking for my verb. Here's named. I love starting with my verb. It's a great place to begin and to build off of that. So here's that word named, which means my subject has to be in front of it. So I have the junior class. And so if I'm going to pick my most important word, my head word, I'm going to choose the word class. And then I'll add in those extra words. I'll say it's the class. And I'll also say it's a junior class. And then I have a noun after it. And then I have this as. And the word as can be a preposition, but we also know it's a good sign that it's probably going to be like one of those pattern 9s or 10s. And so I realized that human of the day is renaming Mitchell. So I'm like, oh, it's one of those weird 9s or 10s. So I'm going to put my straight line here, as straight as I can be here. And I'm going to put Mitchell here. I'm going to do ML for Mitchell. All right. And then I'm going to slant my line because I know that I have this expletive. Remember, expletives can be words like as or to be. And so here's my expletive, as, and then he is the human of the day. So it's in quotes, so I'm going to treat that as all one big name. Human of the day. Way to go, Mitchell. All right. So because I have human of the day, which is a noun, renaming a noun, which is Mitchell, that makes this an example of a pattern 10. Okay, nice little pattern 10 for us. One of the last things we looked at last week. We finish up this by having this prep phrase. Remember, a prepositional phrase which begins the sentence almost always goes underneath the verb. And it does because it answers the question of when. Here's this word after, which is something that tells me time, and then it ends on a noun, poll. So I'm going to build this off of my verb named. So I'm going to come down with after and over with poll. And always the first and last words with our prep phrases. So here's after, over with poll. And then I have all these words sort of describing it. It's a poll. It's a laborious poll. It's an internet poll. Good. And that's sentence number 1. Let me change my color here to sentence number 2, just a little pine green. All right, so then my sentence number 2 says, he sashayed through the hallways with a glittery crown and a blue sash. So I find my verb, which is sashayed. It's kind of a weird verb, but it's a verb, which means he must be my subject. I'm going to try to squeeze this guy up. I don't have a whole lot of room. I'm going to try to squeeze him up here. So I have he sashayed. It's a fancy way of walking. And then I have a prep phrase through the hallways. And here's a prep phrase with, and it's not just to be with a crown, but it's also with a blue sash. So I realize I have 2 prep phrases, but I never actually have any direct objects. So remember, when you have an action verb like sashayed, but I don't have like he sashayed what, I just says he sashayed where and how, that means I don't have a direct object. So this is an action verb without a direct object, which makes it a pattern 6. So he sashayed through hallways, the hallways. All right, so I'm going to do through hallways, the hallways. And then I also have this prep phrase which says, with the glittery crown and blue sash. It's next to the word hallways, but it's not a hallway with a crown. That doesn't make any sense at all. It tells us how he sashayed. So I'm going to come down with. But when I come across, I realize that with has two nouns. This is one of those times where I get to split it. Like I said, I'm really going to be tight on my space here, aren't I? Not really good planning on my part. So here we go. Let's go with crown. And I know I have an and kind of joining those two guys together, so I'll put that in here. And then I also have a sash. It's a sash, blue sash. And then it's a crown, glittery crown. You're going to have a crown, might as well make it glittery. All right, so this is what it would look like if it were just simply two separate sentences. But as you see at the very bottom of the worksheet, the next question says, hey, what if it were actually a compound sentence? What if the actual sentence read, after a laborious internet poll, comma, the junior class named Mitchell Livingood as human of the day, comma, and he sashayed through the hallways with a glittery crown and a blue sash. Well, think about how we join something that splits. If I have two subjects, two verbs, I'm going to change my color here. I would basically take something and I would split it. Just like I split over here, I have two objects of the preposition. So really what I've done is I've actually split the sentence into two halves of a sentence. I've created a compound sentence, something that we were working on already on Friday of just simply fixing run-ons and fragments and looking at compound sentence rules. And so if I have a compound sentence, how do I diagram that? It's pretty easy. So in sentence diagramming, what you're going to do is you're going to join verb to verb with a dotted line. Just like a dotted line here with the word and is joining crown and sash, I'm going to join my two verbs with a dotted line. Now, in true form, if you look in the book, one diagram's on top of the other diagram, and it's in a nice little neat line. I'm not that picky, and I don't think the grammar gods are either. I'm going to change this color, everybody. I think the grammar gods just want us to be able to say, hey, I need you to connect this verb named to this verb sashayed with a dotted line. So it just needs a little dotted line. Doesn't matter how you get there, as long as those two are connected. Okay, that's all it is. It doesn't even matter if you go from down below to below or from below to above or from above to below. It doesn't matter as long as somehow named and sashayed are connected. And then just like the word and's on a dotted line over here between crown and sash, if and was my conjunction joining those two sentences together to make a compound sentence, then you'd put the word and on your dotted line. Like I said, if you look in the actual textbook, it's a little bit more official, but I'm not that picky as long as you can show me that this is how we actually diagram a compound sentence. So we'll probably have a compound sentence on our test. Pretty easy. You just kind of look at them as two individual sentences and then say, okay, now I have them as two individual sentences. Now I'm going to join them together with a conjunction. But once again, the reason I can make a compound sentence is I have a comma conjunction and I have two different sentences. All right. Sometimes early on, people think that two verbs make a compound sentence. No, it's just two verbs. Think of it as one full sentence and then another complete sentence. And that's how we make a compound sentence. Okay, let's pause. Let's take a look at the bottom of this worksheet as we look at what we call an imperative sentence, a sentence which does not have a subject.